Hey there! Did you know Baker's always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower-than-low prices? And when you download the Baker's app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Baker's today. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
I'm Alex Rodriguez.
And I'm Jason Kelly.
From Bloomberg, this is The Deal. Each week, you'll hear us in conversation with business icons.
This show will explore deal-making across sports, media, and entertainment.
That is a harsh lesson in business.
Sports is not as simple as bringing a bunch of big names together.
I didn't want to do another stomp you out speech.
It opened up so many more doors.
The show is called The Deal.
Listen to The Deal.
Listen to The Deal on Spotify.
With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
Stephen Krajcik of the Lotto Jumbo team as well, and Adam Yates of Orica Green Edge, and Anthony Turgis, who had a little bit of a tumble as he headed in towards Scarborough but stayed on his bike.
Great Britain have won their first medal. It was Adam Peaty in a world record time, breaking his own world record.
She punches the air and she crosses that blue finish line. The world champion of 12 months ago, who finished second here last time around, has won it.
The athlete's village is not a place for fighting. I've never heard that ever in Olympic and Paralympic history.
This is Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic sport podcast, covering the games all the time rather than just once every 4 years. I'm Michael.
And I'm John, and coming up in this episode, phew, what a weekend. This is my favourite time of the year as the summer sports we all know and love begin to dominate football. Well, nearly anyway.
Yes, a lot to wrap up from this week. Cycling, rowing, athletics, judo, diving, triathlon. Feel free to join in. Add something if I've forgotten it.
Well, if you have forgotten it, we'll round it up in our news from the games. Oh yes, hockey and skateboard. And as ever, you can let us know what you think and get in touch at any time at Anything But F on Twitter or message us on Insta. And check out our sporting summer calendar for 2023 and all our latest blogs on all things sport, audio and radio at anythingbutfooty.com.
We'll start with cycling and what I think is probably the biggest issue facing sport at the moment. I think one of the bigger issues of recent years facing certainly elite sport was doping. But I certainly think this issue has eclipsed that in the last few weeks, months, and certainly in the last year or so. And we'll start with news from British cycling. Trans women have been banned from competing in women's elite British cycling events. Now, this is a decision by British Cycling. The world body, the world governing body, is called the UCI. They are yet to announce anything definitive, unlike World Athletics and World Swimming. So let's look at the detail of this. It's a policy for competitive activity that covers all British cycling sanctioned competitive events in this country. So that includes things like qualification for the upcoming Olympics, World Championships and the like. It will see the implementation of a new open category alongside a female category. So transgender women, transgender men, non-binary individuals and those whose sex was assigned male at birth will be eligible to compete in this new open category. The female category will remain in place for those whose sex was assigned female at birth and transgender men who are yet to begin hormone therapy. Those whose sex was assigned female at birth are also able to compete in the open category if they so wish. So let's talk about Emily Bridges, who set a national junior men's record over 25 miles in 2018, but transitioned to become a transgender woman in October 2020. Her reaction on Instagram, she said British cycling didn't care about making sport more diverse. Cycling is still one of the whitest, straightest sports out there, and you couldn't care less. So cycling, following athletics, swimming, triathlon, and both codes of rugby have made this move. It's the first big decision for the new CEO, John Dutton. And whilst I would say I welcome the clarity, I would also say I recognise that no solution is perfect for everybody.
And I think me and you don't appreciate, we're two white middle-class men in the nicest possible way, and we don't understand what it feels like, what people are going through, and the emotions. And it's a pretty strongly worded statement from Emily Bridges. But I think what British Cycling have been trying to say, and this is why they've come out with the non-competitive element of this as well, where they said, like, the Breeze programme, which was for women only, that will remain open and inclusive of all trans women as well. So they're just trying to separate the elite side of it, but being open about it as well. And they're just trying to be fair. And I suppose that's the thing that I look at, Michael, and this is my opinion, entirely my opinion, is that at present, science says that male puberty gives an advantage. Arguably, it's why women's sport categories were started more than 100 years ago. Remember, women didn't compete in the Olympics previously, and they couldn't be fair against their male counterparts. So ultimately, elite sport is about a competitive level playing field, and I think that's what British Cycling are looking at doing. But you're absolutely right. The UCI, the main cycling governing body, hasn't ruled on this. I understand that will be coming in August.
Staying with cycling, Britain's Geraint Thomas finished second in the Giro d'Italia. He described it as being raw after being the leader for much of the final week. The 37-year-old was edged out by Primož Roglič. Thomas will now focus on the Glasgow World Championships and a possible ride in the Vuelta a España as well. The Welsh cyclist wasn't expected to be a contender, actually, but he showed terrific form this week after a frustrating winter where he was dogged by illness. Elsewhere, Mark Cavendish was helped by his friend Geraint Thomas, despite the fact they're on different teams. This is the definition of sportsmanship, isn't it? Because Mark Cavendish won that final stage after Geraint Thomas led him out. Cavendish announced this week he'll retire at the end of the season. What a career. An Olympic silver medalist, a record equaling 35 Tour de France stage wins. Will he get ahead of Eddie Merckx this summer? We'll have to wait and see. A rainbow jersey winner, in other words, a world champion back in 2011. Quite a career, as I say. And someone that we have spoken to and met on occasion. A controversial figure at times, Mark Cavendish. Some people could find him abrasive. I always remember when we speak about Mark Cavendish, a walk that you and I took with a couple of close colleagues of ours, a guy who works for Sky called Richard Newman and a guy who works for the Press Association called Phil Barnett. Now, none of us in the worlds of journalism are shrinking violets. But what had happened the day before was that Mark Cavendish in Rio had been involved in the Omnium. He was involved in a bag crash with Park Sang-hoon of South Korea. Also, Elia Viviani, who'd gone on and won the gold and was the race leader. And he'd got into a bit of an argument with some journalists from different countries who thought that after this altercation, he should have been disqualified. And I think he had actually threatened to sue some of the journalists for asking him and questioning him about this event. So he'd actually won that silver medal, which meant that we, the four of us, had the opportunity to go and interview him. And as I said, not shrinking violets, not backwards and coming forwards. When it comes to interviewing and putting the difficult and the tough questions to athletes. But I remember walking up to meet Mark Cavendish this morning, and we were all saying to each other, well, who's going to ask him about the Omnium and the crash? And I think we all said, right, this is the plan. And I think we've told this story before. This is the plan. We'll get all the nice stuff about winning the medal because, of course, despite being part of such really successful British Olympic and British cycling teams, he'd never won an Olympic medal. It was his first Olympic medal. We said, we'll get all the nice stuff out of the way. And I said, look, I'll just go with it at the end. And if he wants to cut us off, well, so be it. That's what will happen. And we got there, and we all tentatively put our microphones out, and Phil put his camera out and everything else. And we said, well, congratulations, you finally got your hands on that Olympic medal, Mark. And he just cut us dead, didn't he? And went, no, first thing I've got to say is apologies to Park Sang-hoon. I've spoken to him this morning. I've spoken to his coach this morning. Yes, it was my fault, but the rules allowed me to continue in the Omnium. And we were all a bit taken aback by it, if you recall.
It's a great story. I'd totally forgotten about that. Absolutely. And I think it's really interesting what you say. that he came over so well and he'd got away and he slept on it and he realised, he needed to say something. And I think what a great example. He's been as a cyclist, but also off the track and the road as well. Rightly so. What a great story.
Yeah, I always just think sometimes we forget how raw it is in the immediate aftermath. And I think it was the immediate aftermath where Mark Cavendish was first answering those questions. And as you say, he had to sleep on it, got a night's sleep under his belt, got some breakfast in, and then was greeted by our 4 ugly mugs. Sorry, Richard. Sorry, Phil. Don't apologise to you. Was greeted by our 4 ugly mugs literally at 7 o'clock the following morning before doing the rounds of the TV studios. And yeah, you're quite right. Having slept on it, he was a very different figure that morning. Staying with cycling, London, the capital, has staged the Ride London Classique recently. Charlotte Kool of the Netherlands won. Lizzie Deignan finished 3rd overall. Brilliant 3 stages. Another great showcase in this country for women's road racing. And that is not always the case. A lot of countries, I think, need to catch up as far as women's road racing is concerned. And I should say as well, we are always in favour on Anything But Footy of a mass participation sporting event that gets people out, gets people active, and Ride London certainly did that.
Yeah, 25,000 riders on the streets of London and Essex as well. It was the 10th anniversary, actually, of Ride London. You'll remember it started down in Surrey following the road race Olympic course from 2012 where Sir Bradley Wiggins, of course, was crowned Olympic champion. But great to see that continuing and the streets of London full of cyclists as well. Talking of sportsmanship, which Michael brought up just a few moments ago, we will be talking about that a little bit later on in the pod and when we talk about tennis, and so much to cover in this episode. But I'm going to talk about rowing right now. And you mentioned Lizzie Deignan, Michael, there. She's just come back from her second baby. I think it was about 8 months ago, and performing brilliantly in the Classique. Well, of course, the big rowing news this week has all been around Helen Glover, double Olympic champion, mum, of course, as well, and competing competitively for the first time since Tokyo. You'll remember she went to Tokyo as a double Olympic champion in London 2012 and Rio 2016, and went back to Tokyo quite late on in the day with Polly Swan, and unfortunately just came 4th, which was a position that unfortunately British rowing got quite used to in Tokyo, and it wasn't their greatest performance. In fact, their worst, I think, Olympic performance in 50 years. But she's back in a women's 4, and it's not just about her. Rebecca Shorten, Rowan McKellar and Heidi Long were in this women's 4, and it's the European Rowing Championships that have taken place in Slovenia over the weekend. And they led all the way, the British women's 4, literally until the last 250 metres when Romania came storming through in a new record time. So a second place for the women's 4, but lots to work on ahead of the World Championships, which happen later on in the summer. But it was an absolutely brilliant performance from British rowing in the Europeans. Of course, you've got to add, when you get the Worlds, you start adding America, Australia, New Zealand, and some big key teams in there. So to perform as well as they have at the European Championships, they ended the weekend top of the medal table, 5 golds, 3 silver, 2 bronze, and a solid start is how the GB Rowing Performance Director Louise Kingsley has described it. She's a former guest on Great British Bosses, if you want to go back and have a listen. A couple of headlines that really leapt out for me, apart from Helen Glover. I thought the men's 8, absolutely incredible, but it was such a close finish. Again, the Romanians came storming through. The rampaging Romanians, I think, is a good way of describing them. They won Britain just by 0.05 seconds, so that was quite incredible. Emily Craig and Imogen Grant were world champions, and they're still unbeaten. Because they were European champions again in the lightweight double sculls, which was fantastic. Lauren Rolls, the double Paralympic champion. Her new partner, Greg Stevenson, put in one of the performances of the weekend with the world's best time in the para mixed double sculls. The men's 4-1. And it'd be great to get the men's 4, wouldn't it, back in a world championship winning position and ahead of the Olympics in Paris next year. They won. And a big shout out as well to the para mixed 4 with Erin Kennedy as Cox, Frankie Allen, Gidra Grakutska, Ed Fuller and Morgan Feast-Noyes. They dominated this, the Paralympic champions, and Erin, of course, returning to the team after being given the all clear from breast cancer. So a brilliant weekend for British rowing. Not every success, but certainly, as Louise Kingsley said, something to build on.
Yeah, a great regatta. And let me say this, actually. What a venue. I mean, when Disney or Warner Brothers or 20th Century Fox, one of those big media players, wants to buy this podcast out, and we're in a land of financial milk and honey, that is on my bucket list as an event I would like to go. I'd like to go and see a rowing regatta there in Slovenia. It just looks absolutely unbelievable.
I thought Rio was pretty cool.
Rio was pretty cool, but we've done that. I'm moving on. I'm looking to the future. I'll tell you what else I'd like to do. I'd like to go to Götzis in Austria and see the heptathlon there, because let's just transition into athletics now. Katarina Johnson-Thompson finished second in Götzis with a score of 6,556 points. That included a new personal best in the shot put, bodes well ahead of the World Championships later this year after what's been a bit of a wretched spell for her of injury. And there was room for improvement, certainly in a couple of those events as well. Austria, as I've mentioned, always hosting a special event. It's another one on my sporting bucket list to visit. It was won by the American Anna Hall, by the way. A very impressive points total of 6,988. Only 4 athletes have ever broken 7,000 points. And what was interesting before that final event, Katarina Johnson-Thompson was really urging Anna Hall on to try and break the 6,000 points, going back to that theme, and it is a theme of this podcast, of sportsmanship, isn't it? Because you don't normally see the gold and the silver medalist urging the gold medalist on to an even better performance. For Katarina, best points total since World Championships win in Doha in 2019. Remember, no Nafi Thiam, though, in Austria. Nafi Thiam of Belgium. Those are the 3 to watch, I think, in Budapest. Staying with track and field, well done, Hannah Cockcroft. Stunning performance in Switzerland. Another world record for Hannah Cockcroft in the T34 100 metres. Her time of 16.31, beating a record that Hannah Cockcroft already held. We should mention Danny Sibri as well, who set the second fastest T54 5,000 metres time in history in a race where he went quicker than the previous world record. The new world record, though, was won by Marcel Hug, who, of course, we saw in London at the marathon, winning there. And a quick note about the Diamond League in Rabat. Morgan Lake, 5th in the high jump. Jeremiah Azu, 7th in the 100 metres. Lawrence Okoye, 4th in the discus.
And talking of the Diamond League, more big names have been confirmed for the anniversary games. The London Diamond League meeting at the Olympic Stadium, the London Stadium in Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. 3-time world champion Sharika Jackson will go up against Dina Asher-Smith in the 100 metres, which will be worth seeing on Sunday, July 23rd. And 2-time world 110-metre hurdles champion Grant Holloway, also of the US, also joins a world-class lineup. And talking of the US, a world record over the weekend at the Los Angeles Grand Prix. Ryan Cruiser threw 23.56 metres to break his own world shot put record. Now, he didn't just beat it. He beat it by nearly 20 centimetres, 19 centimetres to be precise. He beat his own world record. Absolutely incredible throwing from Ryan Cruiser.
World Athletics confirmed the timetable for next year's World Athletics Indoor Championships being staged in Glasgow. Athletes will compete on the 1st to the 3rd of March in 2024. Women's pentathlon will get the action underway on the morning of day 1. The finals will feature in each of the 6 sessions. Now, event organisers are calling on Scotland's craft and design community to showcase their creative talent with an exciting opportunity to design the championships medals. And all this, as it will be called, the Short Track Championships. We're getting rid of the terminology indoors now. It's a Short Track Championships, which means, of course, it could technically now be staged outdoors. The World Athletics Council is supporting the concept of short track competition to allow more flexibility in the setting with 200-metre tracks, which, as I said, may in the future then be able to be constructed outdoors or in some imaginative temporary city locations rather than in a traditional indoor arena. And I'm a big fan, as you know, of an imaginative temporary city location for a sporting event.
Yeah, we've kind of seen that, haven't we, with like the Manchester Games and the like. It would be nice to see a bit more of that, I think, from an athletics point of view, just to try and get themselves out there and noticed a little bit more.
This is Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic sport podcast. Stay with us because John has got lots to say about the French Open tennis next.
I'm Alex Rodriguez.
And I'm Jason Kelly.
From Bloomberg, this is The Deal. Each week, you'll hear us in conversation with business icons.
This show will explore deal-making across sports, media, and entertainment.
And that is a harsh lesson in business.
Sports is not as simple as bringing a bunch of big names together.
I didn't want to do another stomp you out speech.
It opened up so many more doors.
The show is called The Deal.
Listen to the deal.
Listen to The Deal on Spotify.
This is Anything But Footy, the Olympic and Paralympic sport podcast. Now, John started this episode by talking about how much he loves this time of year. And I know why, because SW19 is honing into view for you. And I know what a special place, what a special event the All England Tennis Championships is for you. And, of course, we are getting to that point now where we really sort of warm up. We have the traditional curtain raisers on the grass courts. But before that, the clay of Roland Garros is calling.
Yeah, you said you wanted to go to a World Championship rowing in Slovenia and Gotsis. I think Roland Garros might be on my bucket list. And maybe when we go to the Olympics next year, because the tennis is going to be held there, and from an Olympic point of view, like Wimbledon was for London 2012, I think I might be able to go there and see Rafa Nadal on the clay before he actually retires. It might be my Neymar in the Maracanã moment.
That'll be where you're basically asking me to take pictures of you, isn't it? I'm going to be your social media manager for that day.
Exactly.
I've always fancied, if we're talking sporting bucket list, I've always fancied a weekend that involves the Monaco Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And then get yourself up to Roland Garros for a bit of French Open tennis. I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michael's going to talk about the French in the triathlon a bit later on in the podcast, so that is to come. But let's talk tennis. No Andy Murray, of course, at the French Open, and no British women in the singles draw for the first time in a Grand Slam major since 2009. That's 14 years. Now, Emma Raducanu, of course, would have been included, but she is out injured and she misses Wimbledon as well. But unfortunately, Katie Boulter, Harriet Dart and Fran Jones all lost in qualifying earlier as well. And as I say, no Andy Murray. And it was really close. By the end of day 2 at the French Open, it was really close that we actually had no British men in the draw either, because on day 1, Dan Evans lost in straight sets to Thanasis Kokkinakis, who of course was the Australian wild card at in the French Open, and he was the man who took Andy Murray to the longest match ever, 5 hours 45 minutes in the Australian Open earlier this year. But he had a straight sets victory over 20th seed Dan Evans, so he went. Jack Draper was making his debut for Great Britain. Thomas Echeverry, the 23-year-old Argentinian, up against our 21-year-old Draper, who reached the quarterfinals in Lyon last week. Unfortunately, though, he had to serve underarm for much of the first set. He only lost it 6-4. I mean, he must have a heck of a serve if he can do that with an underarm. He ended up brought a trainer on court, but he retired after losing the first game in the second set. So he's out as well. And Cameron Norrie, of course, 27-year-old Wimbledon semi-finalist. His dad, David, from Glasgow, born and bred there. He was a set-up against Benoit Paire of another French wild card, but then lost the next 2 sets, 6-4, 6-3. He won the next one 6-1, but then was a breakdown in the final set, but he fortunately came through to win that 6-4 against Paire, who actually Cameron Norrie beat at the US Open last year. And Paire said at that point he would retire. I think Cameron Norrie, who's the 14th seed, would have wished he'd retired before that match, but he's safely through. So we have a Brit in the second round of the French Open. But I think it's really interesting from a British point of view that the LTA, the Lawn Tennis Association, gets £50 million a year from the All England Championships. 43 million, I think they got last year. And we don't have a single female singles player playing in a Grand Slam for the first time in 14 years. The spin from the LTA is that Henry Patton, Julian Cash, Alicia Barnett and Olivia Nichols are all making their debut in the doubles, so something to look forward to there. And Alfie Hewitt and Gordon Reid will also be looking to become the most successful men's wheelchair doubles partnership at Roland Garros, having just won the Barcelona doubles at last weekend too. But from my point of view, Michael, really, I think it's going to see how Roland Garros is without Rafa Nadal, because it's the first time in 15 years he hasn't been there. He's the defending champion. Will, of course, Novak Djokovic, who easily won his opening round match against Kovacevic of the USA, will he go ahead of Nadal in this Grand Slam race, going for a record 23 Grand Slam title, or will world number 1 Carlos Alcaraz win that? And then in the women's draw, is it going to be Swiatek of Poland, the defending champion, again? Or will Sabalenka, who won the Australian Open, perform and really challenge her? Now, the big story in the first couple of days at Roland Garros is that Sabalenka obviously is a neutral for this tennis tournament, but she is from Belarus, played the Ukraine's Marta Kostyuk, and she won Sabalenka 6-3, 6-2, and then boos filled the stadium. Now, Sabalenka thought that the fans were booing her, but they actually weren't. They were booing Kostyuk because she didn't shake her hand before or after the game and the match. Now, Sabalenka previously said she understands why Kostyuk hates her, but she has been very vocal and said no one supports war. So this is something we've talked about a lot on the podcasts about whether athletes should come out and say things. She has said that. However, Kostyuk, the 20-year-old from the Ukraine, said the French fans should be embarrassed. Now, there is a little bit of history in France. They have a love-hate relationship with Djokovic and Serena Williams in the past. I remember her being booed on Roland Garros. But for me, this opened up a huge question. I wanted to just get your view on it, Michael, because tennis is one of the few sports implementing a plan that the Olympics have said, which is neutral athletes, allowing Russia and Belarusians to compete, and that's what Thomas Bach wants for Paris next year at the Olympics. The president of the IOC, held up tennis as an example. He says it's working in tennis, so why not would it work at the Olympics? But this isn't working, but what a reaction from the fans, and is it who is right? And I suppose it's an impossible thing to say who is right or who is wrong, but I suppose my question is sport so important that nothing else matters, i.e. that Ukraine and Belarusian athletes should compete against each other? And the Olympics and sport, of course, they always say they don't want to mix with politics. But actually, is sport part of life, and so it should reflect what's happening in the world?
It's a huge part of life. It's a massive part of the national fabric, certainly in this country, Great Britain, where we broadcast our podcast from. And it's certainly something we've been told by numerous guests on Great British Bosses, our sister podcast, about the importance of sport. But that's not to say that sport is the biggest thing in the world at the moment. I remember when Thomas Bach first made the comments that he did about it working in tennis and, the IOC will follow that blueprint. And I remember saying to you at the time that what Thomas Bach will do is watch and wait. And they will not make a decision, the IOC, about the Olympics until they really have to. They'll leave it as late as they can. And they'll be watching what is happening at Roland Garros. They'll watch it at Wimbledon. They'll be keeping a watching brief across everything, which involves athletes, neutral athletes, if you like, from Belarus and Russia. And they will then, I think, be formulating their plans. So, yes, I think this will be a very interesting week as far as the workload is for the IOC in Switzerland. They will have watched this closely. They will have noted, I think, what's happened this week. And they will, of course, then, I think, be making the necessary moves to try and ensure that that doesn't then happen on the Olympic stage. But, we've seen similar things. We've seen, handshakes refused between athletes of different nations for various reasons happen at Olympic Games in the past. And I'm sure we will again. But I think what Thomas Bach and, the rest of the members of the International Olympic Committee will be thinking about at the moment is, they've still got over a year to their games. There's a lot that could happen in the geopolitical world between now and then. And as I said, back on that podcast, when the IOC first released that statement about it, they will just be watching and they'll be waiting.
And I think we started this section talking about the All England Club at Wimbledon. It'll be interesting to see because obviously for the first time we will have Russians and Belarusians as neutral athletes competing at Wimbledon. It'll be interesting to see what reaction is from the fans there.
On to our news from the Games, and we'll start in Poznan at the Canoe Sprint World Cup event. Trevor Thompson and Nur Dembele finished 8th in their C final of the K2 500 metres. James Russell finished 5th in the K1 5,000 metres final. Matt Johnson finished 12th in the same event. Elsewhere, Russell also finished 1st in the K1 1,000 metres C final, and Lewis Fletcher finished 1st in the K1 200 metres B final.
With the continued absence of a certain Tom Daly, Andrea Spendolini-Sirix continues to be the talk of British diving as she reclaimed her women's platform British title at the British Diving Championships in Sheffield at the weekend. The Dive London athlete and European champion led throughout, finishing with a total score of 344.20 points. The triumph adds to her platform title at the British National Diving Cup back in February and completes the domestic double ahead of a summer that includes the European Games, which is coming up next month, and the World Aquatics Championships as well. Watch out for her as we build up to the Olympics. I think she's going to be a huge name. And Kyle Cathari won the men's 10-metre platform.
Combat sports, we'll have news of a world champion in Taekwondo in a moment for you. But in Judo at the Austrian Grand Prix, congratulations to Kelly Peterson-Pollard, who won a silver medal. That was British Judo's one medal at the event. And elsewhere, as we said in combat sports, Taekwondo World Championships taking place in Baku as we record. Day one is coming to an end. First up for GB Taekwondo, double Olympic champion Jade Jones. Unfortunately for Jade Jones, lost in the quarter-final. But Tokyo medalist Bradley Sinden from Yorkshire won the gold medal for day one. It's his second world title, another British world champion. So congratulations to Bradley Sinden. Later this week, Lauren Williams, Mohamed Noor, Rebecca McGowan, Madison Moore, Farzad Mansouri and Bianca Cook all in action. I think we should talk more about Bradley Sinden in a future episode because it's literally just happened as we are recording. So there's not much more I can add because all I know is that he won the gold medal at this point in time. But congratulations, a world champion, not too shabby.
Exactly, well said. Lee Valley Hockey Centre is playing host to a mini Pro League tournament with Great Britain, Belgium, China and India all in action. The British men won both their ties at the weekend, 4-2 against India and 3-1 against Belgium. The British women going down 3-2 to Belgium in their match, and then after beating the Chinese on the Friday by 1-0. There are more matches coming up this coming weekend, so the first weekend in June on the Olympic Park.
Triathlon, and congratulations to Georgia Taylor-Brown and Alex Yee, both winners in the World Championship Series event in Sardinia. That's 2 out of 2 for Alex Yee, and Georgia Taylor-Brown follows Sophie Caldwell and Beth Potter as a winner in the women's event. So 5 out of 6 wins so far in the World Championship Series for British Triathlon. The European Championships in Madrid next. And you know what I'm about to say, don't you?
Go on.
You should watch the British triathletes. I think it's going to be a really, really good Olympic Games for them next year in Paris, where I think their closest rivals might just be the French.
Yeah, who finished, I think, in the women's 3rd, 4th and 5th. Exactly.
Very loaded, Great Britain and France. It's going to be some dust up next year.
It's going to be superb. Talking of British success, skateboard GB rider Sky Brown, who's now 14 years of age, yes, how years are flying by, took the gold medal at the World Skate Pro Tour Championships in San Juan in Argentina over the weekend, the second Olympic qualifying event for the Paris 24 Olympic Games. Obviously, she said she was stoked to get a score that was in the 90s, but also great watching all the other girls pushing it to the next level. So well done to Sky Brown and Skateboard GB. And talking of Paris, ticket sales for the Olympic Games, an unprecedented success, say organisers. 14 months to go until the opening ceremony, and Paris 24 has already sold more than 70% of the 10 million tickets available for the Olympic Games. And the next stage in the Games experience, the Paralympic Games, is announcing ticket sales, which will open on October 9th.
Ian Reid is the new chair of Commonwealth Games Scotland. He was most recently, you might recall, CEO of the Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games Organising Committee, which I think we all judged was a huge success. Previously served as the Chief Financial Officer of the Glasgow 2014 Games. He will take over from current chair Paul Bush following the Commonwealth Games Scotland AGM in late May.
Now, I said at the start of this podcast that this is my favourite time of the year, so please check out the sporting calendar, because literally every weekend that comes along, you're going to want to know what is happening as we build up to Paris 2024 next summer. And also with all our latest blogs on the website, anythingbutfooty.com. And as ever, you can get in touch at any time at anythingbutf on Twitter or message us on Insta or Facebook.
I can only really echo what you've said there. I don't think we've ever kept it a secret, have we? That we love this time of year for sport. The Premier League season, that's a sport called football. It's over. It's gone. Just the FA Cup final, then the small match of the Champions League final to worry about as far as English football fans are concerned. Hopefully then, for you, the opportunity to watch some other sports. Taekwondo, the World Championships this week. Why not follow our British triathletes' European Championship action in Madrid coming soon? Catch some French Open tennis, and then you could talk as long as John is able to talk about it, and then look forward to Wimbledon and start planning to catch as much of cycling's World Championships as you possibly can. That's going to be in Glasgow. We've got the Open Golf, the Diamond League Athletics. That's coming to London before Budapest and the Worlds. And we are seeing some fantastic results domestically with just over a year to Paris. You can really, really feel it. It's all bubbling up again, and I'm excited.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.